shape of the Treasury Yield Curve in the United States is important because it's inverting and does suggest, if it's right, that we could actually be in for something even weaker in 2018, maybe even a US recession. Professor Jeremy Batstone-Carr. There has been mixed economic data coming out of the Eurozone over the past weeks, and the ECB is set to announce whether they will change their interest rates this Thursday. Jeremy, what do you think the ECB will deliver to the markets?
Well, in relation to the European Central Bank's Governing Council meeting, which of course will be taking place in Tallinn in Estonia, I think that the central bank will try to be as uppish as possible on the outlook for growth for the region, which won't be too difficult, actually, because, of course, after President Trump stepped away from global engagement at the G7 meeting in Taormina, hot on his heels to Europe came Premier Li from China, full of debate over how Europe might participate in the Silk Road project. So my expectation is that the growth outlook will be talked up by Dr. Draghi in the wake of the Governing Council meeting, whilst at the same time I suspect he will play down the outlook for inflation. Indeed, deflation or disinflation is back on the agenda. So my sense is that there will be no change in regional interest rates. A greater talking point is the possibility that they might reduce the number of sovereign bonds acquired as part of the public purchase plan. They might increase the number of corporate bonds to keep the level the same, but they're stepping away from sovereign bond purchases, and that might have an impact on the bond yield curve in Europe, although, of course, if disinflation is on the agenda again, then we wouldn't expect the curve to move very much.
Also on Thursday is the UK election. When Theresa May first called the snap election back in April, the poll showed the Conservatives winning by a landslide. Now the polls have turned, and whilst they do still see them winning, it is only narrow and could actually see them lose seats instead of gain. What do you think we can expect?
I think I would have to agree with that. And from an economic perspective, the big point is that, generally speaking, governments in power tend to go to the polls when they see consumer confidence extremely high. Now, consumer confidence data was pretty high for the UK back in April. However, in the intervening period, it has dissipated. And I think that when one looks behind the data, one could have seen even back in April that that was a very brittle number, and I suspect vulnerable to potential significant regional variation. So what we have now, of course, is a situation where the polls do indeed show Labour catching up very quickly, and consumer confidence having dissipated. This has rattled the ruling Conservative administration, so I do expect the election to be a very close-run thing, and that's hugely important, of course, particularly in the context of the forthcoming Brexit negotiations.
Before Trump announced that he would be pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, he commented on how strong the US economy was and the tremendous economic progress the country has made since he took office. However, according to the Federal Reserve's latest survey of regional economic conditions, the US economy is growing at a steady, if sluggish, pace. Jeremy, do you think the US economy is showing tremendous growth? And do you think data from the country out this week will reflect that?
In relation to the U.S. economy, what we have seen since President Trump's election victory is a significant divergence between the soft data, so-called survey evidence, business and consumer, which has indeed tended to the view that the U.S. economy is growing strongly, and the hard data, which has painted a much weaker picture. Now, of course, the expectation is that the hard data will eventually catch up with the soft data, never mind a weak first quarter, which tends to be weak due to seasonal adjustment issues, and never mind the labour market data, which, whilst purportedly quite strong, the unemployment rate falling again, may indeed be entirely due to the very complex birth-death adjustment algorithm that the Bureau of Labour Statistics use. So that data may be erroneously strong. Federal Reserve, I think, is determined to go ahead and put U.S. interest rates up, possibly as soon as the 14th of July and maybe again this year. And yet it doesn't look to me as if the US economy is growing at anything like a robust or tremendous pace. And I suspect we're in for something of a fairly sluggish 2017. The shape of the Treasury Yield Curve in the United States is important because it's inverting and does suggest, if it's right, that we could actually be in for something even weaker in 2018, maybe even a US recession.
Thank you for lending us your time and insight, Jeremy. So that's what to look out for in this week ahead, but stay tuned for plenty more analysis of the FX markets.